This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Radar, and I'm so thrilled to be speaking with Cynthia Erivo about Drift. How are you, Cynthia?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. I had a chance to see this film way back in January at Sundance, so
Mhm.
it's nice to see it back in the conversation now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm pleased that we're having a chat about it. Yeah, it's nice.
So it's certainly a very good film, but I would not call it in any way a pleasant film. Can you talk about wanting to do a project like this that I'm sure was very emotionally draining?
Well, I think when I read the script, I fell in love with the character. I fell in love with who Jacqueline was. I knew it wasn't going to be an easy lift, but I kind of think that that's when the most beautiful things appear, when there's work to be done and you have to dig for the things you need and you have to sort of bear down and hopefully you could come up with something that's really special. And I just felt like it was a really special project. So I wasn't really afraid of how hard it would be. Yeah.
Were you familiar with the book, and did you read that before coming on
Uh,
with the
I
project?
No, I hadn't read the book. I knew what the which book it was based on, but it came to me as a script first, and a different iteration of the script. And when I read the script, I didn't have any questions at all. I was ready to do that. Yeah.
Have you read the book since?
I have not. No, no,
Have you heard from anybody about differences between the book and the script?
no, not really. No, I haven't had anyone have any issues with it. Anything that we've got in the film now.
That's great. I mean, I think again, it's a very powerful film. There are a lot of different themes involved, and I think it's also one of the things that stood out to me most is that there are such horrific things that Jacqueline experiences,
Mm.
and because of the trauma she's endured, she doesn't talk about it. She doesn't try to share too much with the world. Whereas I
Mm.
think a lot of what we see on social media now is people really trying to broadcast atrocities and other things and try to make sure that the world knows what's happening. Do you see any relevance there?
Well, I think it's a very different thing. Other people speaking out on other people's behalf and other people reaching out. This one is about a very singular person that you could pass by who's been completely displaced. So we're talking about a person who is on the street and you have no idea where they've been, and I think that both has relevance now, and both very important. So yes, it's important to amplify those who are in need and those who are dealing with terrible things, and it's very important to hear from those people. But there are those people who simply don't have the language or the healing that they need in order to speak about things that they have already been through, and that is Jacqueline. Jacqueline has already been through something and has been left alone and is on her own and has had to figure out how to make it through each day. And so when passers see her, they don't see anyone that's out of place, or they simply don't see her at all. She's an invisible person to many people. And the I think the crux of this story is to allow people to realize that we could be walking past people and not realizing that they have all been through something, and we could be completely ignoring those who need our help. That's the main thing here, I think. Yeah.
And I think that's also why the relationship builds between her and Kelly, the idea that she sees that she's someone going through something. She doesn't need to be curious about what it is, but they're able to just be people together and be there for each other as they need to be.
Correct. Yeah. And they're both human beings who have been through something, and they are experiencing a kind of loneliness, both in their very individual ways. But I think that there's a recognition of the loneliness that both of them are going through, and in that they sort of find each other. Yeah.
I know that Alia Shawkat has done a lot of comedy and other things, but this is a nice sort of understated, more dramatic performance from her.
Yeah, but I think she's capable of doing loads of different things. And actually, in within that comedy, I think she showed her dramatic chops as well. I think that's why I kind of fell in love with her when I saw her in Search Party. I thought she was wonderful in it because of how layered the performance was, not just because of how funny it was at times, but actually how heartbreaking it was from time to time too. So I think that she just gets to stretch even more in this, which is kind of wonderful.
Always happy to have any mention of Search Party. I think that's a wonderful, weird show that nothing
Yeah.
else will ever be like that again, and certainly not this film.
No.
But that's the connective tissue there.
Yeah.
There's also, this is set, on an island where a lot of people associate, luxury and relaxation. There's an interesting sort of dichotomy there between what these people are going through and what all these other visitors are doing. What was the experience of filming that like?
Yeah, we were definitely in Greece in the out in the open, and it was, rough and ready, and we were, working against daylight and time and all of those things. But it is that wonderful sort of heartbreaking view of what's going on. You look out and it is absolutely stunning. There are beautiful views, and there are mountains and rocks, and everything is so luscious and full and colorful. But there's this one singular person who's also dealing with things that are just deeply heartbreaking and painful. And I think that's kind of a juxtaposition against what we all sort of sometimes experience, where everything might look wonderful, but actually on the inside it's very, very different. Yeah.
How did you approach the Liberian scenes where you're, at home and it's obviously a lot more upsetting?
How did I approach them? Well, you take from the script what's going on, and you take from your surroundings what's going on. I sometimes use music to get myself to a particular place, but the rest is just listening and experiencing what's actually happening. Yeah.
Did you shoot those separately, like chronologically, or how did that
So
work?
we shot everything that was in Liberia in the week before we shot everything else in Greece. So we shot all of that scene, all of the trauma that she's gone through, everything that is in that part of the world together. So it technically is chronologically, because that is the first thing that happens to her, and we go back in her past, and then we move forward into Greece. Yeah.
What was your experience like working with director Anthony Chen?
Yeah, it was, we really had to work hard. It was his first English speaking film, and it's my first time working with him, so we had to find our rhythm first. But we're having to find our rhythm in that part of the movie, which is, tough, but we found our way, and we got there, and we both understood how emotionally connected we were to this piece. So I felt like we found a really beautiful common ground whilst we were moving through this piece. Yeah, it was really cool to find that.
I'd love to hear a little bit about the song that is part of this film. It would be.
Yes. So I was on a run, and I tend to make playlists for whatever project I'm doing. And I had made a playlist for this, and as I was running and listening to it, the song Father had come up. I don't know why I put it on the playlist. I just happened to put it on the playlist, and I listened to it. And for some reason, this is the first time it had struck me the way it did. And I kind of knew automatically that this felt like the language of the piece that we were doing. And I love Laura. Laura and I had have a previous relationship. We're friends before this is happening. So I reached out to her because I felt like she would be the right person to collaborate with, to create a piece that would be a part of this project. And she said yes. So once we had finished the project, I sent her the movie, and she read it. She watched it, and pulled from loads of different parts of this movie, especially the moment at the end where she dives into the water. There was just this sort of connection with the universe, with Earth, with the world, and she created this soundscape, and we begin writing, and the idea that she sent to me felt really right. So we sat together and we wrote this piece, and that's what we have. It would be.
I think it has a very haunting, powerful quality that works well for the film that I think people should really experience.
Thank you. I love it. I really,
Got-
really love this song. Yeah.
Have you had a chance to see the film with an audience?
Yes, I saw it in Sundance with an audience, and I just watched it at another screening with an audience, and it's still really tough to like watch it. It's still really tough to sort of move through, because I remember everything about it. I remember shooting it. I remember all the moments and all the smells and how it felt, all of that stuff. It struck me. I guess it surprised me that it was still feel so raw when I watch it. Yeah.
Were there any unexpected questions from the audience or just reactions during the screenings?
Not really, no. I think the thing that's really not necessarily unexpected, but I think is very special, is that I have people reaching out to me after they've watched it, saying that it stays with them, which is exactly what you want a film like that to do. You want it to stay with the person. You want it to live with them for a little bit, so they, you know, keep thinking on who these people are and where they are and where they've come from.
I also think it's one that really should be seen in the theater because there's something about distractions and other things that, in this case, will take you out of it in a negative way because you really need to be just sort of
In
grounded in what she's going through.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I want people to go to the theater to see it. I hope so. Yeah.
Well, it's 2023, and so it's been 5 years since Widows, your first big, film role. And I've been seeing all this stuff because I think it came out a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
5 years ago, people talking about, whatever happened with this movie? Why wasn't this a big Oscar hit? And I don't have an answer for that, but
I
I
don't
just,
either.
yeah,
I don't have an answer for it either. I just know that I had a great time doing it. It was my first film. Um, and I had a great time doing it. I loved working with Steve, and I love working with those wonderful, incredible women, all who are brilliant. And I love watching them and seeing how they're doing and keeping in touch. So, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's things are created that don't necessarily land at the right time. And who knows, maybe people are going back to it now and watching it and seeing it a little bit differently.
I hope so. I also been thinking about these two films together and just the way they deal with violence, because I think in Drift, it's something that's really seen as something so traumatizing. And while there are obviously some very, problematic moments in Widows, also that's an action movie. It's one where things happen quickly, and that's part of the excitement.
Mm.
How do you sort of relate those two to each other in that way?
I I don't know if I've ever related those two together, to be honest. I don't think I was thinking about widows when we were doing Drift, really. And I'm not sure that the violence is the same, to be honest. I think the violence is very, very different. Um, in that here, Jacqueline really it, it sort of happens around her and to her and doesn't ever really stop. Even when she gets to Greece, it doesn't, there's no end to it. And there's no she doesn't have the choice of going to do a heist. There's nothing action filled about Drift. It's something happens to a person, and then she spends the rest of her life having to deal with it and having to live with it, and she loses everyone she loves. So I think it's a very, very different conversation. Widows was desperately painful for those women who were going through their very individual things, but each of them had agency in a way to change their circumstances. I don't know that Jacqueline has that yet. When we meet her, she doesn't have that, and I think she is searching desperately to find it. And maybe by the end, when we leave her, she's figuring out a way to do that.
Hearing the way you're talking about that, I'm thinking about, your first Oscar nomination for Harriet, and that's a woman who has really terrible circumstances and then does find her own agency, and
Yeah.
sort of an interesting, I think, bridge between the two. That's certainly, you wouldn't call it an action film, but it's a film that has this hopeful, inspiration that I think Jacqueline isn't able to achieve because it's
Yeah.
obviously is she's in a very isolated way. So it's just interesting to think about those your cinematic choices and how they sort of connect a little with each other.
Yeah, I mean, more than anything, I think I choose women who I've never met before. Women who have different circumstances, women who want very different things and who want to be seen. And with Belle, she was a mother who wanted to make sure she had the means to take care of her family. With Harriet, she was a woman who wanted freedom for both herself and for those people around her and her family, and was driven by something that I don't even think she understood, but knew that she had a mission. And with Jacqueline, she wants to make it to the next day. She has lost something, and I think deeply is suffering from the loss of her family, wants them back, but wants to find a way to keep living, and but living with dignity, because that's the thing that can easily be snatched away from a person when they're completely displaced. And I think each of them want very, very different things. They want to be seen, for sure, but they're all dealing with very different situations. Yeah.
Well, based on the fact that you didn't read the book before making this movie, I think I know the answer, but do you prefer playing people who are real people or fictional characters?
I mean, I prefer playing whoever, takes my fancy. I don't think it's never everything. It's never been to do with whether they're real or not. I've had offers about for biopics with people who are real, and I've had offers for people who are not real, and I've said no to both. It just depends on whether or not I align with the human being I'm reading at that time. They can be completely fantasy or they can be very, very real. If I am interested in meeting that person, that's probably what I'll be drawn to.
I like that. So what's next for you? What do you want to do? What are you working on?
Well, I'm in the middle of working on Wicked, and that's a big heavy lift. So we're finishing that off soon, and then I go into Prima Facie, which is based on a play, very, very soon after that. Yeah, so working on those two projects, which are no small feats, and maybe doing some more music. Yeah.
I don't know if you can answer this, but do you think that fans of the Wicked musical will know what they're in for, or is this really something very different?
I think that they will it'll be familiar to them. I don't think we're giving you something completely different, but we're definitely enhancing the experience, hopefully. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Cynthia, for taking a few minutes. It was very nice to meet you.
You too. Thank you very much.